Welcome into another jam-packed episode of Talkin Ball. Today on the show, we have obviously Talkin Ball segment. We have a little college football preview. Going to go through draft board just a touch, see which teams have the most talent in college football. That is draftable talent, not just overall talent. We're going to do build an ultimate college football team based off the best units in college football. Then we're going to go through and make some predictions on who will be in the college football playoff. Pretty honestly, I'm going to be honest right off the top. I'm not super. This college football season is the most top heavy that I can remember in terms of like a clear cut 1 and 2. I can remember if it's not going to be Alabama, Ohio State, I will be absolutely floored. You can bet literally right now on DraftKings for Alabama and Ohio State to each have 11 plus regular season wins. If you make that bet, it is minus 120. You are not even getting your money back. You're not even getting even money to get both 11 plus wins, which is insane. That's how good those two rosters are. We'll obviously get to that in a little bit. But then we have a Luke Fickell interview, Cincinnati head coach. If you don't listen to the interviews, you're going to want to listen to this one. Audio got a little choppy. I will be up front with you right there. Unfortunately, because he was electric, Fickell is great on the mic. He had to be ready to fucking put on a helmet and strap on some shoulder pads and get my ass kicked in an Oklahoma drill because he's just that kind of personality. And then we got some segments at the end. PVOOs, Would You Rather, and football adjacent power rankings. All right, let's talk some ball. Cut day. Big story out of cut day. Alex Leatherwood. My Lord. Raiders first round pick in 2021. And we were critical of this at the time. Even I did not think he was getting cut year 2. Like he was like somewhere in the 40s on the PFF draft board. Obviously new regime, whatnot. But now that means that after Colton Miller, who was the Gruden era's very first round pick, their first round picks were Cleveland Ferrell, Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Abram, all had their 5th-year option declined heading into this season. Abram, the only one who looks like a starter, and he may not even be. Damon Arnett, Henry Ruggs next year, both off the team, did not make it 2 years. Alex Leatherwood, off the team, did not make it 2 years. And now before you go shit on Mike Mayock, who was the GM, I would like to say, in Mike Mayock's defense, I have it on good authority. I'm not going to burn my source who it was. He was not in charge of the first rounds. First rounds were John Gruden. John Gruden had final say on first round picks in the John Gruden / Mike Mayock era. Now, why Mike Mayock would agree to that when he took the job? Unfortunate. I mean, he had to break into the league somehow. And obviously, if you're an NFL network, quote unquote GM, it's not easy to probably get those opportunities in the league. So you take them where you got them. But I have it on good authority. And it was not from Daniel Jeremiah. I'm not going to tell you who it was from that told me that. Not from Daniel Jeremiah. And then he said this in relation to it, who obviously Daniel Jeremiah, very close friends with Mike Mayock, quote tweeted a tweet from Dov Kleiman lamenting the Raiders' first round picks, basically saying what I just said about how bad the Raiders' first round picks have been, and said, this is actually a complicated situation, a lot of cooks in that kitchen, confirming to me what my source said that, hey, it was Gruden making those picks. So Mayock's still a G. And Mike Mayock, if you look at his, record outside of round 1 and the Raiders, if you just started them drafting in round 3, they might have been the best drafting team in the Mike Mayock era after round 3.
Who was their second round pick that it was Trayvon Merritt, wasn't it?
Trayvon Merritt.
Yeah,
he was
which
solid.
We were very high on.
He was solid. He's been solid. And Malcolm Kuntz looks like a breakout player after this preseason. And they got Nate Hobbs in the 5th round, who was one of the better slot cornerbacks in the league last year. So year before that, obviously Lynn Bowden, Brian Edwards, Tanner Muse, John Simpson, Amik Robertson, kind of cheeks. But then 2019, they found Max Crosby in the 4th, Hunter Renfrow in the 5th. Year before that, Arden Key in the 3rd, who has been very good after he's, not been 220 pounds, which he was when he came out in the draft and actually put on some weight. Looks like a player actually for the Jaguars this year. So Mike Mayock, here set the record straight. I'm not blaming him for the Raiders' struggles, but John Gruden, tough scene. Obviously not there anymore. Won't be in the NFL anytime soon. Probably falls on his shoulders. Some other interesting news around cut day. O.J. Howard cut from the Bills after signing a free agent contract there and may be coming to Cincinnati via Mike Quinn because of you, Mike. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the shirt that I have on. I tweeted it out too, but so this was this stems from, it was 2019. It was actually, it was the weekend that we left the Senior Bowl. So it was my first Senior Bowl. You guys got on a plane back to Cincinnati, or I don't know, maybe you didn't, because I think that was the year that you flew to Jackson, Mississippi by mistake.
I went to the wrong place.
So I assuming you got home. But that was my 30th birthday weekend. So I actually went from Mobile to Sarasota to celebrate my 30th birthday with the lady. And I think it was that Saturday, we had dinner somewhere down there, and we decided to go to the Westin first, which if you're ever in Sarasota and you get a chance to go to the Westin, it's sick. They got this awesome rooftop bar that like it overlooks the whole bay. Plus, I mean, it's the Westin. It's nice. They got a pool up there, which we didn't really get to use because it was January, and I underestimated how cold it is in Sarasota in January. But anyway, I had this shirt on, and we walk off the elevator, and this dude's like, "Hey, bro, that's a cool shirt." And I said, "Thanks, man." Fashion Nova, just kept it moving. Didn't think anything of it. Is big dude, so that was my first thought. I was like, that's a big motherfucker right there. And the night goes on, and, you know, dudes are coming up to him, like dapping him up, taking pictures and whatnot. And that's kind of when I realized, like, okay, this is somebody, because dudes don't just go up to other dudes and are like, "Hey, man, can I get a picture?" Like, that just doesn't happen. So we get in the Uber and we go to dinner, and I forget how it got brought up, but like our Uber driver was like, "Yeah, a lot of the Buccaneers are in town this weekend," because maybe they had a bye or like played on Thursday. They were off. And, you know, it makes sense, right? You go an hour south to Sarasota and, you know, rip it up for the weekend. And so that, like, it clicked. It's like, that's got to be somebody from the Buccaneers. So I pulled it up on my phone, and I'm going through the roster, and sure enough, it's O.J. Howard. O.J. Howard wanted the shirt off my back, and now
he's coming to Cincinnati, take it.
Yeah, the shirt's here, and O.J. Howard is here. Although, I mean, it's like 4 p.m. here, and he still hasn't signed. Apparently, they're still working on a deal, and they scooped up Devin Asiasi. So I don't know what's going on with that, but I mean, I have tickets to the Bengals Steelers home opener. Like, I got to wear the shirt, right?
You could get in the front row, scream OJ,
yeah,
and point at the shirt, and he's going to be like, "Who the fuck is this guy trying to yell at me?" And he'll be like, "That shirt stinks, bro. It's outdated, 2 years old."
I don't know. I still get a lot
I'm kidding. No, I'm joking. That shirt's sick. I'm just saying OJ Howard's going to.
Yeah.
It's moved on.
So that's my OJ story.
OJ Howard.
And now he's here. Maybe.
Possibly. Other interesting cuts. Kellen Mond and Wyatt Davis, the third round of last year's Vikings draft, both gone. Wyatt Davis, the knee injury, man, just never recovered. His senior year, I guess his senior year at Ohio State, was never the same player after that. That's the whole, like, you know, why do guys take people off their board because of medicals? Wyatt Davis is why. Sometimes guys just never recover from injuries like that, you know, should otherwise be routine. Kellen Mond, though, he was just so robotic. He never really played. It was insane because he never really played well at Texas A&M, despite having, you know, a good amount of talent around him. Did not see it coming, the axe coming this quickly. But if you're playing as poorly as he was, you kind of got to expect it. It's hard to recover from being that bad after a full year, you know, in the NFL. And obviously a new regime not tied to Kellen Mond whatsoever. So, yeah, Kellen Mond out the door there in Minnesota. Other somewhat surprising cuts here. Tyler Johnson, Buccaneers wide receiver. You thought maybe with some of the injuries there, they might want to hang on to him. But the kind of unspoken thing that Jim Nagy kept saying pre-draft about why he wasn't high on him, or not saying, just saying like, yeah, you know, like he's not really that great a prospect. Tyler Johnson could not get to the right place at the right time. He was not he just did not have that part to his game. He made a lot of mental mistakes on tape with the Buccaneers. And obviously with Tom Brady, probably that's a Brady saying, not gonna tolerate that for too long. So yeah, Tyler Johnson out the door. I believe he landed with the Texans, though, so TBD on how he fares there. And a couple wide receiver trades. The 2020 wide receiver class on the move here. Laviska Shenault traded to the Carolina Panthers. Now, why the Carolina Panthers? I don't know, because he's not like going to see the field there. They got a logjam at wide receiver. They got Terrace Marshall, who could barely see the field there, second round pick last year, and kind of doesn't really fill a role that they don't have there. But man, he's just got to slim down. Like, that is the biggest thing I took away from watching his tape at Jacksonville last year, is that, like, he turned into a fucking Hulk, dude. Like, he's like 230, and there's no reason at the wide receiver position to be that size, unless you're like 6'5". But if you are, a normal, 6'2", 6'1", Laviska Shenault, like there's no reason to be built like Najee Harris. He's got to slim down to get some of that flexibility, get some of that explosive and some speed element back to his game because he's just way too big. Guys get their hands on him way too easily.
Do you think they told him, like, because maybe you're going to be some sort of like hybrid wide receiver?
Wide receiver / running back.
Do you think maybe he did that
Possibly.
on purpose?
It could be. Urban Meyer has said a lot of wrong things in the past year and a half. So could have very well told him that, he's filling that role in the offense and will force him to put that on. But dude, he's got to trim back down. Because he does not look like the guy even freshman year, sophomore year at Colorado that we saw. The other one, Jalen Reagor, traded to the Minnesota Vikings for 4th and a 7th. Some conditional aspects to that trade. But Jalen Reagor, obviously another guy who got huge from what he was on tape at TCU. Showed up like 205 to the combine. Never should have been that. Obviously trimmed down a little, and his issues weren't just related to that. But that's given up on a guy early. Obviously, they have a ton of wide receivers there in Philadelphia, and like he won't even see the field, so it's not that big a deal. But I'm not ready to call Jalen Reagor, a 23-year-old wide receiver with his kind of talent, a complete lost cause. I'm just not. We've seen enough over the years that guys can change. And great job by Kwesi Adofo-Mensah, the new Vikings GM, to make that trade, to pull that trigger. And great job by Howie Roseman, too, to say, he's not going to factor into this roster. We want to get something back from him. I'm not too proud to say, hey, we took him over Justin Jefferson. I'm not going to trade him to Minnesota because everyone's going to fucking meme and bring up the phone call where Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman were laughing at me for taking Justin Jefferson. Because that's all you saw over Twitter was that pick and that video after the trade went down. Howie Roseman doesn't care. He's going to make the best deal. He's going to make the best roster. And he's done a heck of a job doing so. And obviously made a great deal with the CJ Gardner-Johnson trade as well, which is interesting from the Saints' perspective because obviously you think about the Saints being all in year after year, just dealing away a starter for, mid-round picks. But CJ Gardner-Johnson is kind of the personality where if he's unhappy, I don't think you'd want him in your locker room. We've seen how he can trash talk other people. Trash talking your own locker room, he could do damage. He could overnight bring that locker room to its knees just from a verbal perspective. So I could see why they got rid of him. Like, people are questioning it. It makes sense to me why they did. All right, that's the Talkin Ball segment. Let's get into a little college football preview. Going to go through here the conference by conference and highlight the teams with at least 3 players, 3 prospects. So that's obviously draft eligible guys, 3 years out of high school. 3 prospects on the PFF Top 100 draft board, which you can find right now at pff.com/draft/big-board. That's where you find it.
I'll put it in the link.
Put it in the link.
Or put it in the description.
A lot easier than trying to figure out what I just did there. But we'll start off with the ACC, where Clemson, the clear favorite, heading into this college football season, also the clear favorite. They are the clear favorite in that conference. They are ranked 4th overall. NC State is the second-ranked team in that conference, ranked 13. Big fan of Devin Leary, NC State QB. I think they could. I was about to say make some noise. I had to stop myself. I think they could challenge Clemson for the ACC. I truly do. But I also think Clemson's defensive line is going to be absolutely devastating this year. It has the chance to be, to rival last time, Georgia last year, Clemson 2018. Like, this is that caliber of offensive line, defensive line. Miles Murphy, Brian Brzee, both top 10 on the PFF draft board at defensive end, defensive tackle, respectively. The big question, DJ Uiagalelei, is he going to look like the guy we saw? Like, even if he's the guy we saw as a freshman, they're making the playoffs. They're going to run the table because their defense is that good. But that's a big if, because the dude got yips in the biggest way. I would not be surprised if freshman Cade Klubnik ends up even taking snaps away from him because that was bad. Too many Dr. Pepper commercials, not enough. No, I hate when people say that. He just lost. He just put a little too much pressure on himself is probably all it was. Hopefully he realizes that there's nothing to lose at this point besides his job, which may very well happen soon. But Clemson, the most prospects of any team in the ACC on the PFF Top 100.
We need DJ to be good too, because then we can maybe try to get Big Dave back on the podcast.
I know, dude.
That's a callback to the
we had him agreed
listeners.
to come on, and then we had to be like,
unfortunate situation.
We're going different ways. But Big Dave, former Rihanna bouncer, his father, who also father of Mateo, 5-star defensive end, DJ's brother, has not decided where he's going to go yet, but that guy's a freak. So we'll see. Syracuse and Clemson also have 3 guys on the PFF draft board, each respectively. The ACC's got actually some quarterback talent this year. So we shall see how that conference shakes out. Like I said, I'm probably going Clemson, as we'll see with my college football playoff picks. On to the Big Ten, where Ohio State and Michigan are the only teams with at least 3 prospects in the PFF Top 100 draft board. Each have 4. A little surprising for Ohio State. I mean, they're getting really hyped up this season. It's more because they're a complete roster with just an insane passing attack. Not necessarily because, like last year, I think they had more draft talent, probably. This year, though, that wide receiving core, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. with CJ Stroud, and a very good offensive line as well. It's going to be... That's right. Them and Alabama, the reason they're 1-2, just 2 clear-cut, by far the best offenses in the country. They're just going to put points on everyone. So that's why they're up there. Ohio State's obviously going to be my pick to win the Big Ten. Michigan also 4 prospects in the top 100. They're reloading. No real super difference makers, though. I'd say the first prospect on this list comes in at number 70. Blake Corum, the running back, who I'm very high on. I thought he was clearly the better of the 2 between him and Hassan Haskins last year. He'll be getting a lot more touches. RJ Moton, the safety, comes in at 76th. Then you have Iabi Enoma, the recently transferred, former 5-star. If you haven't heard of this guy, he's 88th on the PFF big board. Transferred from UT Chattanooga. But he started at Alabama, transferred from Alabama to Houston, then transferred from Houston to UT Chattanooga. So this is his 4th school. The guy is a hell of an athlete, not much of a hell of a football player, but Michigan's had good success developing defensive linemen. So we shall see how he fares there. But he literally just got there a week and a half ago. So that'll be interesting to see. And then Mozzie Smith checks in at 99th on the PFF Top 100. Obviously, Bruce Feldman's number 1 Freaks List player, if you listened to last episode. But that's it for the Big Ten. I'm still high on Wisconsin's chances this year. I know Braylon Allen, obviously not draft eligible, only 18 years old. I don't know if you've heard that. He's a freak, or is he 19 now? But that guy's one hell of a running back. He's going to be the next in the Wisconsin running back pipeline. Nick Herbig defensively, and obviously Jim Leonard, the best, top 3 DC in all of college football. They'll be right in the mix. But I will say Michigan's schedule is favorable in terms of they could be rolling into the Ohio State game undefeated this season. So that's where probably it starts and ends with the Big Ten in terms of the playoff conversation. On to the Big 12, where Lincoln Riley knew. Oklahoma, not one of the teams with 3 prospects on the PFF Top 100. Not a lot left in the cupboard after Lincoln left. I don't think they win the Big 12 this season, truthfully. I think Texas, do I want to bet on Steve Sarkisian? TBD, but I think Texas offensively, Quinn Ewers, if he is as advertised, should be able to move the ball. And obviously Bijan Robinson, probably the single best running back in the country. It's a massively loaded running back class coming up. Unbelievable amount of talent. To me, the best I've seen in the PFF era. And Bijan's still clear 1 for my money. Just dude's got an all-around skill set, so he will be featured a lot. That's a good combination when you have a running back of that caliber. And at the collegiate level, running backs can they are their own rushing offense. And I think it's why a lot of people still believe so much in drafting running backs highly, is because at pretty much every other level of college of football, running backs matter a ton. Having that guy changes games. But then in the NFL, the athletes are so good, the holes are so small, the game is so different that the running back position does not matter as much. And so still having a guy like Bijan is going to get them in the mix. But the only 2 teams with 3 prospects in the top 100 on the PFF draft board, TCU of all places. And they lost one in Zach Evans transferring the running back to Ole Miss. But TCU with wide receiver Quentin Johnson, and then their pair of cornerbacks, Noah Daniels and why am I blanking? Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, TVT. That's why I was blanking on the name, because I always call him TVT. Travius Hodges-Tomlinson. One of the best cornerback groups in the country. Are they going to be the best? We'll see when I build the ultimate team here in a little bit. But those two are great. Kansas State, Deuce Vaughn, fun to watch, Hall of Famer. If you haven't heard Deuce Vaughn, again, go watch his highlight tape. 5'6", 176 pounds, and a top 3 running back in the country right now. Dude's insane. All right, on to the Pac-12, where it's only Oregon and USC who have 3 prospects on the PFF draft board, but I'm a believer in Utah this year. They may not have a ton of draftable talent, but I think they have a very good college football team. I think Cam Rising is a very good college football quarterback. We'll get to them when we talk about the playoffs, but I believe in them. Oregon has hell of a linebacker duo, a lot of talent defensively. Worry about their offense to a degree. And then USC, I don't know. They're kind of a wild card. It'll be very interesting to see how they shake out, because they were a flawed roster. Obviously got a lot better when Caleb Williams transferred in and Jordan Adams had transferred in. But I still don't think it's going to clear up all the holes that we're missing, especially on the defensive side of the ball, which has obviously notoriously been Lane Kiffin's weak suit over his career at Oklahoma. So we'll see how they fare. Obviously going to be much, much better than what they were in the Clay Helton era. Hard to be worse. So on to the SEC, which is really where the battle's going to go down, because, like I said, we had Clemson, Ohio State, and Michigan with 4 was the most prospects in the top 100 before we got to the SEC. Alabama has 10. Alabama has 10 prospects in the top 100 on the PFF draft board. And there's guys that I've seen on other top 100s that did not make the top 100 on the PFF draft board. This Alabama team's sick. When Nick Saban said last year they were rebuilding, he was not joking. This Alabama roster is absurd. They're just, it's difficult. And like at the right positions too. They have one of the best quarterbacks in the country, if not the best, depending on your opinion. I think he's the best. They have a great receiving core. They have an insane defensive line. They have the best secondary maybe in the country. And it's just, Alabama's loaded once again. Georgia has 6 though. Georgia is up there. Georgia did not lose, despite losing an insane amount of NFL talent last year. They didn't lose them all. A guy by Jalen Carter and Keely Ringo, both top 10 prospects on the PFF draft board. Nolan Smith, a top 20 prospect, along with Broderick Jones. So 4 guys in the top 20, 5 guys in the top 50, 6 guys in the top 100 from Georgia. If they didn't have Stetson Bennett at quarterback, I'd put them in the conversation, but they have Stetson Bennett at quarterback. I mean, he is just so limiting to what you can do offensively. He's not even like a running threat. I don't know. I just cannot believe that Georgia, that's the best they can do for a multiple-year stretch, is Stetson Bennett at the quarterback position. The other teams with 3 in the SEC, Auburn, Texas A&M, LSU, and there's one more team with 3 out there lurking in college football. Out there, the underdogs across the college football landscape. The number 5 overall team in the country, underdogs, Notre Dame. They also have 3 on the PFF top 100. Those are your players in the top 100. Now let's build the ultimate team. Let's talk about some of the best units across the landscape in college football. And we are going to start at the quarterback position, where this one is not really a conversation. It's Alabama to me. Bryce Young, he's got that it factor. I'll keep saying it until I'm proven wrong about this. The it factor of Bryce Young. Everyone that's been around him says it, and just like flipping on his tape, it's hard not to believe in it. He's just a super talented dude. And the thing that, the short quarterbacks get knocked on is how can they work the middle of the field? How can they see over the line of scrimmage? He was the highest graded quarterback who worked in the middle of the field last year. Now a lot of those are deep balls to Jamison Williams that may dry up a little bit, but Tyler Harrell is faster than Jamison Williams, the Louisville transfer. Is he nearly as polished? No, but that guy can fly. So deep balls ain't going anywhere. Best running back unit in the country. So Alabama's QBs is what I'm taking. Running backs, I already highlighted this. Texas, Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson. That's a hell of a 1-2 punch. Roschon would be starting for a lot of places right now if Bijan Robinson didn't exist. Texas has the best running backs in the country. Onto the wide receiver position, where I already raved about these guys too, and it's Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr., the Ohio State wide receiver core. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is better than JSN right now. I do. And I know I get called a JSN hater every time I bring him up, but like, he's going to run a 4.55 at 6 foot 200. He's exceptional working in the middle of the field, exceptional ball skills, exceptional after the catch. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is like that do-it-all X outside type of wide receiver. I just think he's insane. So that Ohio State wide receiving core, it ain't slowing down anytime soon, despite losing the 10th and 11th overall picks last season, the 12th overall pick the season before that. I mean, an insane amount of college football talent. Justin Fields threw to the best receiving core in college football history, probably back in 2020 COVID year, when they did have Jameson, when they did have Jackson Smith-Njigba as well. That's going to go down in history as really being something else. Onto the tight end position, where this one, I think I just said 2020 Ohio State was the best receiving core in college football history. 2022 Georgia is the best tight end group in college football history. I truly believe in this. I hard pressed for me to find too many better than this. You have Brock Bowers, who was by the end of last season the best tight end in college football as a true freshman. Poorly runs in like the 4.4s at like 240 pounds. He is an animal. And honestly, I don't think he needs to get any bigger. He blocks like an animal too. That guy's a special athlete. And then Eric Gilbert, who was the highest rated tight end recruit ever, that we've talked about a bunch in this podcast already about his prospects, runs in the 4.4s at 250, moves like a wide receiver, might play some wide receiver for Georgia at 250, but obviously as the off field, he just missed last season and no one's ever come out and said why. He showed up back when he did come back to Georgia in the spring at 300 pounds. So a weird sort of career arc for a guy like that, but we'll see how he fares in the football field. But talent, no one's denying that. You'll find him as high as like top 15 on people's draft boards because he's that physically gifted. And then Darnell Washington, the absolute monster who, doesn't hold a candle to the other two guys athletically, but it's kind of hard to when you're 6'7", 270 pounds. He'll be a draftable prospect, probably somewhere day 3, obviously coveted for his length, his inline blocking ability, but it's an insane tight end group there at Georgia. All right, on to the best offensive line in the country. And I'm going to get called a homer for this, and rightfully so. But this Notre Dame offensive line is very good. This Notre Dame offensive line is tremendous, in fact. Joe Alt at left tackle, Blake Fisher at right tackle. You haven't heard much about them because they were true freshmen last year. But Joe Alt was the highest graded true freshman offensive tackle in the country. Blake Fisher was one of the highest, I think he was the second highest rated recruit, played very well his very first game against Florida State. Jermaine Johnson, before he got hurt, was injured out for the rest of the year, but that's a very good tackle duo. And then you have Jarrett Patterson on the interior as well, along with Josh Lugg, who's like a 6-year senior at this point. They got a lot of talent on that line. That is, if there's any reason to be high in ND, if there's any reason to justify their 5th overall ranking, which I'm not even that high on them, it's because this offensive line is that good. It is legit. Best defensive line in the country, Clemson. Whew. I already raved about them. But you got Brian Bresee, Miles Murphy, the headliners right there, who are probably going to be top 10 to 20 picks in next year's draft. You got Tyler Davis, a guy who injuries over the course of his career, but he was the highest graded true freshman defensive tackle in the country back in 2019, I believe. So going into his senior year now. And then, this name I'm going to just butcher, but Ruke or Horo. Hate that I didn't look that pronunciation up before I tried to say his name here live on air. But a versatile defensive lineman, number 33 for them. Also, probably going to be drafted somewhere in the mid-rounds in next year's draft. That's a lot of talent on one defensive line. So, yeah, Clemson, pretty stacked on that side of the ball. Best linebacker group in the country. We're going to Oregon. And Penei Sewell's brother, Noah Sewell, the massive, he's kind of a Leo Chanel-esque linebacker there at 6'2", 250. Maybe not what projects best to the NFL. He may not get drafted super highly, but in college football, you don't want to block him when he blitzes, and you don't want to see him in the hole as a running back when it's one-on-one because you're going backwards. He hits like an absolute freight train. Scary dude. And then Justin Flo, who may end up being the first linebacker drafted next year if he just stays healthy. Played one game in his collegiate career, but he was a top 5 recruit coming out at linebacker, number 1 overall linebacker recruit. Watches one game against Fresno State and was in awe of what that guy can do physically. At 240 pounds, they can fly. This linebacking core for Oregon is sick. Cornerback group, I might take some heat for this, but I'm taking TCU's cornerback group. TVT, Travis Hodge-Tomlinson, is an exceptional, is maybe like the best collegiate corner in the country. Not a great NFL prospect because he's 5'9", 180. But that doesn't really, like those guys, it doesn't matter as much in college football. You're not going up against physical monsters. Like you're not going up against guys who know how to use their size nearly as much. You are going up against guys who really aren't technically savvy. And when that's the case, he sticks with wide receivers better than anyone else in the country. His fluidity, he was on Bruce Feldman's freak list because he runs reportedly in the low 4.3s. His fluidity at that size is insane. And then Noah Daniels, if he just stays healthy, we've talked about him a bunch. One of the best pure man-to-man corners in college football, but has played under 500 snaps in 5 years because he has never stayed healthy on the football field. And then the last one here, best safety group in the country, Alabama. They had, this is where I was saying they had guys that did not make the PFF top 100 that I've seen on other top 100s. And that's some of the safeties that they got in the mix there. And DeMarco Hellams and Malachi Moore in that kind of, he's in like the slot role. But Brian Branch is safety 2 on the PFF draft board. Jordan Battle, safety 4 on the PFF draft board. They got talent, dude. That is a hell of a safety group. And then Kool-Aid McKinstry is a hell of a cornerback, but he's only a true sophomore, obviously not draft eligible. But that is your ultimate team, your best units across college football. Get to the playoff, my predictions for it. And again, I'm not super excited. I'm obviously excited for college football. Saturday, I will be at the Horseshoe, losing my mind accordingly, losing my dignity as well. But I am realist, and I know that Ohio State is a much, much better football team, especially on the offense side of the ball, than Notre Dame is at this point. My playoff predictions, Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Clemson 3, Utah 4. I think Utah sneaks in. I don't think we get to – I don't think there's that clear second-best SEC team this year. I think there's good parity in the SEC. I think Georgia will lose more than one game. And then at that point, I think it's going to be difficult to put them in over the likes of someone like Utah, who very well may go undefeated because Pac-12 outside of USC, Oregon, not the deepest division, not the deepest conference. Not a lot of teams are. So there you have it. There are my playoff predictions. Let's go now to a coach who knows a thing or two about coaching in the playoffs. Luke Fickell. Like I said, the audio on this may be a little shaky at times. I apologize for it, but the content, top notch. Trust me, you're going to want to listen to this one. I am joined now by Cincinnati football head coach Luke Fickell, coach of the year, reigning coach of the year. You're actually, there's like, I was looking it up, there's like, you won 6 coach of the year awards. That seems like entirely too many coach of the year awards. Did you have to go to like 6 different banquets to get those?
No, thank goodness. They still did some stuff virtually and some things like that. In the preparation for playing in the bowl and then the playoff stuff, there were some things you couldn't get to. So I guess save you from having another meal that I probably didn't do.
Well, I'm going to get right into that playoff stuff because I know you're probably sick and tired of talking about it, but I just had a few questions about that Alabama game. The biggest one being, what was the pregame speech like? Because the storylines were straight out of a movie. I have to imagine the pregame speech was something similar, right?
Well, you kind of got to figure out, you got to know what your team is. And I think that's what's difficult sometimes when people think it's about a pregame speech in some sorts. I think a lot of the stuff leading up to the game, you're talking about what it's like and what the scenarios and the situation. But for us in particular, you didn't want to, kind of put this connotation in your head like it's, David versus Goliath or something. Mm-hmm. So we had a unique team that had a lot of confidence. So I kind of sided away from just saying, hey, we're playing, the monsters. It kind of really went on about the confidence to who we are and what we do is good enough. And in some ways, that was my philosophy. That's the way we had been all year, because we had played some big games, whether it was the Notre Dame game and things like that. So it wasn't as much of a, hey, let's go shock the world. We kind of went into the season with, hey, we know what our expectations are. So as you get to the end, you don't want to change your philosophy. Now, I would say that one of the biggest mistakes I made is maybe in that preparation of understanding not just the magnitude, but what the environment and some things are like that I believe I could have done a better job, whether it was in the pre-prep or even right before the game.
Do you ever have to, or did you have to like calm guys down? Because like such a big stage, such a different moment from anything they probably ever lived before. Did you even with like your speech or how you approach the team be like, hey, this is like just another game. This is just business as usual almost.
So we never would say it was just another game, but yes, in some ways, no, but I mean, in some ways it was about, hey, let's don't play, so emotional and things like that. Like, this is going to be a 4-quarter battle, but what I didn't do a better job of is in the pre of really prepping them of what that environment's going to be like. I assumed a little bit of the year before playing Georgia in the Peach Bowl, that they, kind of understood and knew what it was going to be like. But the reality is there was only like 8,000 people at that COVID year. And I think the environment in some ways, maybe that initial shock, we did not play well in the first couple series. And I think that might have had something to do with the emotions of whether it's pregame and things like that, that you get so high and then that initial shot, maybe you don't quite have the focus and mentality to what it is that you need. But those are all things that you start to evaluate after the game and after what what the outcome looks like and where you could have done better.
Did you ever get frustrated with kind of the conversation around the playoff last year? Because I know I did about the Cincinnati team and kind of how the media treated you guys with almost kiddie gloves, saying, oh, it's a group of 5 team. Yeah, if they go undefeated, but like a 1 loss, other team should make it, when you guys had 9 players drafted, the third most of any team last year. Like you had legit NFL talent. You had more players drafted than Alabama did. Like, and I was banging the table for that. I'm like, look at this, because I'm an NFL elite draft analyst here. And like, I'm like, from a talent perspective, they can hang with anyone. They got an NFL QB, and like to kind of just relegate them to, the Hawaiis of the world, the teams that have made noise in the group of 5 in the past, was just, to me, insulting. Did you ever like factor in, or did you ever hear any of that chatter?
That's why we try not to talk about those things, because it is deep down inside. We've always said that, even when we weren't very good in the first year, that we're no different. And I didn't want it to be an excuse because, hey, you go and in year 1, you play Michigan. No excuse. I don't care what our league is or what people say or what people call, the group that we're in. So it's always kind of been that mentality. So when they talk about it, the whole thing was all year was we're not carrying the flag for anybody other than ourselves. It isn't some, hey, they're representing all the underdogs or all the guys who aren't in the, so to speak, top groups. As you can tell, I don't say that word of G5 stuff.
I love it.
So we kind of the whole year, we're not carrying a flag for anybody else other than ourselves. We have our burdens. We know what our expectations are. That's plenty. We put the pressure upon ourselves. We're not worried about, not just what people say, but, even the positive that people are saying about, how you guys representing us. Like, no, we represent you two. We represent our program. And that's plenty for us.
How do you, so it's a new team, obviously, this year, like I said, you had 9 players off to the NFL that got drafted, a lot of new starters. Those guys are obviously going to be hungry to prove themselves, but how do you yourself not get complacent as a head coach, saying, obviously probably a lot of the goals that you set out to when you started at UC, you probably accomplished at this point. So how do you yourself not kind of get complacent and rest on your laurels?
Wake up every morning and say you deserve nothing. You earn everything. Right before we walked in here, we just got done watching I think the 12 or 13 big plays that we gave up against Alabama in the game. So it's a good time to ask that question, because just got done watching as bad as it gets. But I think that it's not just about, that everyday mentality. For me, it's about the program. And so we've all had to fight those things, I think, in some ways, whether it's, me as a head coach or an assistant coach or somebody just walking in here or anybody in our program. It's a good thing to have to battle against, right? I mean, you'd rather have that than the other stuff that everybody's speaking negatively about you. And, you don't have any expectation. You're trying to fight your way out of the cellar. Either way, you've got some things you got to battle against. And I think I sent a text message last night to a lot of the guys and coaches about I felt a little complacency. I don't know if that's practice 19, wanting to get on to Arkansas and not finishing up this, so to speak, kind of camp mentality. So I'm not saying we've got it perfect. It's something that creeps into my mind, whether it's for me or players.
So you yourself, obviously, you're saying you're not complacent. You're still as hungry as ever. But like, as a fan base and the perception around Cincinnati, how has that changed? Because it's definitely different. I moved here in Cincinnati in 2015, right before obviously you started here. How is it different from when you first, whether it's fan interactions, whether it's stepping into recruits' houses, how much different is the kind of energy around the program?
Oh, it's definitely different, and you can't say that you don't notice. I mean, it doesn't matter whether you're on campus and there's a little bit of a buzz, or you're in the community. There's definitely a buzz, and I guess you could say sometimes for me that's where some of the pressure comes. When you have that kind of outside people, so excited about it, which is a great thing. You start to remind yourself like, oh, okay, this is really starting all over again, and it's a great thing. But I don't want to ever sound like we're not happy about the excitement we've got and the the notoriety, so to speak, around the city and the community. You look at all this change in the NIL world for our kids. Mm-hmm. It's a really good thing to have obviously your program in a really good place and those guys in a higher profile situation to help them out in the long run. But all those things just bring a little bit more upon you to say, okay, how are we going to handle this? Do we really have the maturity to be able to handle some of these other things, especially as this new season gets rolling? And there's going to be some more adverse situations that, we're going to have to be able to handle with a lot of not new guys, because we got a lot of guys that have been here, but new leadership and a new kind of, environment and culture that, is always every year kind of adapting and changing.
So the energy around the program, some may describe it as big, thick energy, which if you're walking around tailgates or at the UC campus, you'll see shirts with that up and down. What do you think of that moniker? Do you like that moniker, or does your wife hate it? Do you enjoy it?
I don't know if we've ever even talked about it. I think no matter what, it's just okay. So I'm 49 years old now, and my wife says sometimes you act like an 18-year-old. I said, well, I need to continue to act like an 18-year-old to have the energy that keep up with you guys and to create it amongst our program. And I'm not saying I have to do it, because we got a lot of guys that got an incredible amount of energy, coaches included. But I think it is. It always comes from the top. And when we walked in the door here, we told the kids, I said, if you're a laid back person, this is probably not going to be a good program for you, because in general, there's nothing that we do that doesn't have some sense of urgency and energy behind it, whether it's the complete off season, whether it's a pickup tournament basketball we're doing, or whatever it is. It's like, we don't want to fake it. Like, if we're going to do something, we're probably going to do it at an energy level and an expectation level that maybe it's beyond what some guys would expect.
So you were college roommates with Mike Vrabel. You guys both won Coach of the Year at your respective levels last year. And you had one of my favorite quotes ever when asked about that. Someone asked, did you ever expect this? You said, I expect it from me, but not from Mike. But I had a great story about Mike Vrabel from the Combine this year, and very much encapsulates who he was. One of my scouting buddies is a scout for the Giants, scouting intern for the Giants. At the Combine, there's like a free-for-all with all these players that you're grabbing to interview. Scouting intern has a player. Mike Vrabel comes up, is taking him to the room for the Giants. Mike Vrabel just comes up, takes the player, and says he's coming with me. What would you do if Mike Vrabel came up to you and did something like that?
Well, we've had quite a few of those altercations at some point in time. They probably weren't over players, but back in college, it could have been anything at that point in time. The last meal in the fridge of some sorts, and I think we've had our bouts plenty of times. And I think just because the nature of what it was, it probably would have been a little bit uglier than maybe it was with the Giants guy. But no matter who you are, if a head coach in that situation, whether it's Mike or whoever, it would be a hard situation. But I think it would definitely have been a little bit different. Maybe A, because of the relationship, but also B, because of the uniqueness of having that happen probably 15 to 20 times at some point in time in our lives.
So you learned, or like basically came up under Jim Tressel, and you've said you had to kind of unlearn the conservatism that was Jim Tressel and his love for special teams, his love for punting and all that. Are we ever here at PFF going to convince you to go full on analytics, go full bore into the aggressiveness that is analytics?
Well, we do. I mean, I don't know if everybody knows and understands that. I mean, It has definitely changed us. And I'll go all the way back to, not that when I came here, I knew that, okay, look, I'm not Coach Tress. Yes, I grew up under that era. And I understand for us to be successful, we have to do things our way, not always the way that you learn them. And I think it was year 2 when we kind of got into the analytics of things. And for me, being a defensive guy in general, it just allowed me to not, always just think in some of those defensive mentalities, like, well, we're going to play really good defense, so punt the ball down, let us win the game. So to be honest with you, we really started doing a lot more of the analytics in year 2, and it just kind of really rolled. We not fell into it, but we said we were going to do it. We said we were going to be more aggressive. We preached it all of camp. And that week 1 where we kind of followed through with playing UCLA at UCLA, I think in the last drive, we went for it on 4th down 3 times when we were up 3. We went for it on 4th and 1, when all of a sudden you could have kicked the field goal to go up, obviously with a minute to go in the game, to make them have to, obviously score a touchdown to win the game. And it kind of worked out. So I'd say I wasn't sure I was a true believer until that whole year kind of continued to bring me to where I am today, and knowing that in everything we do, we're going to be aggressive. That there are some things that I would say maybe that analytics don't take into consideration, just with the, momentums or energy, or even, different things that can be a gut feel within a game. But I know for me, it's been really, really critical in helping me evolve the mentality for myself of kind of the way that I grew up.
I'll also say this about analytics, and I'll use like Brandon Staley as kind of a coach to point to, that like everyone loves Brandon Staley. If you just say, the analytics told me to do it, it's kind of like passing the buck. It's an easy cop out for you. Like you don't have to answer for it. The analytics guy now has to answer for it,
Yeah, they don't know who that analytics guy is, but no,
the mythical analytics
guy. And I've always kind of thought about that. It's people always say that, well, you're not the one who has to go to the press conference afterwards. And I say the press conference is the least of my worries. My biggest worry is standing up in front of that team afterwards. I can't say I was a diehard believer in that year 1, and I made a kind of a commitment as we did as a team to be aggressive, and it worked out. And it really helped change the environment and the culture of our program after that at UCLA win. And to me, the whole thing was about standing in front of those guys. I never have been, really worried about the press conference afterwards, because those guys in that room mean so much more. And the last thing I would ever do is, well, the book told me, guys, afterwards, it's hey, this is a decision that we all make. And I think that's what's been really good for us in our program. Call it analytics, call it whatever. To have everything that you do, to have a little bit more of that aggressive mentality, and not just blitzing if you're a defensive guy or taking backs if you're an offensive guy, but truly making those guys understand that, that we're aggressive by nature. We can't just pick and choose when we're going to be aggressive. Just like we can't pick and choose when we're going to have energy, right? Well, this is a day where we're not going to have a whole lot of energy. We're going to kind of be chill and laid back. It's just not going to happen in the program.
I loved that rant about analytics right there. That got me ready to, run through a proverbial brick wall. I want to talk about some former players, though, of yours, because I know I ask a lot of coaches, have a lot of coaches on. Whenever you ask about current players, you get a little like non-answers. No one really wants to put that soundbite out about a guy currently on their roster. So I'm going to ask about some guys currently in the NFL that got drafted last year. The one I want to start with is Curtis Brooks, because the 3-tech on your defense last year, you called him the MVP of the defense at some point. How did he fall to the 6th round? Because I was there at the pro day, and he was electric. His explosiveness jumped off. I mean, I was very surprised he lasted as long as he did. Why do you think kind of the NFL was sleeping on him as much as they were?
Well, I would say I'd say first, probably consistency. So the year before, he was on no list. Mm-hmm. He actually was a senior and was done. And then he realized that nobody even called him to even a local invite of any sort. So I think by nature, he just was one of those guys who was never on a list. He was hurt that year. He didn't, not that he didn't play well, but he didn't play as much. And then obviously when he came back, I think when he left, he went and played in the, I'm not sure, one of the bowl games. It might have been the NFLPA game. I'm not sure exactly which one it was. I think he lost a lot of weight and thought he was going to be maybe a little bit of a different position. And it happened to our guy, Elijah Ponder, the year before, where all of a sudden he was a defensive end for, went down to Tampa and became an outside linebacker type of thing. So I think just in his mind that all of a sudden he goes to that bowl game and weighs 2-something, 55s, whatever, and realized. So I think that maybe it looked at him and said, okay, the consistency of maybe the couple years before, the consistency of his weight. who is this guy and what is he? But I know for us, I'm not lying. With exception to Ahmad, yes, Sauce obviously would be natural MVP. I've always said that Curtis Brooks played as good as anybody did for us last year defensively.
Yeah, the PFF grades bore that out. He's the second highest graded player on the team, obviously behind Sauce. So let's talk about Sauce a little, because UCF game freshman year is when you said like you knew you weren't taking him off the field anymore. And he was a skinny kid coming in 155 pounds. But when did you know he was, top 5 type of pick special that like, hey, maybe I'm not going to get one of these guys, another generation?
We didn't know going into the season. I think in the spring or in the winter when we did like our combine testing, and all of a sudden he ran 4.4 something or something like that. Sometimes strength coaches or whatever they're doing on those timing days, it's always a positive, and you try to. We don't do that, but all of a sudden that was the first time I was like, okay, because the knock on him around the league was, well, he's just a long kid that grabs. He just doesn't run that well. And that was the first time I'm like, okay, he runs even a lot better than I thought. And I think maybe it was the UCF game later, a little bit mid-year, because we always, even going into the season, okay, it's probably his last year. He's probably a top 2-3 round pick guy. And he made a play kind of later in the game that he ran a screen pass down all the way on the other side after he got blocked. And I remember us talking as a defense. For goodness, this guy's going to be a legitimate first round pick. They see effort like this. They see speed like that on the film on game day. Wow. I don't know that we realize I have next level guys as we had.
So you said that Sauce, when you had Sauce, it was like you could play 10 on 10. And truthfully, like watching the tape, you guys were playing 10 on 10 a lot of times, and the coverages you were running. How much does that just change? How much did he change how you schemed your defense, and how much are you having to adapt now without a guy like that?
Well, we didn't scheme a whole lot until this past year, because I thought it was kind of set up for that guy to have to play a lot of, one-on-one in a lot of situations. I think this past year we started, making it a little bit more difficult on ourselves sometimes, just scheming things up, because people did a good job at trying to leave him on the backside when he wasn't going to get any work. And then we had to even grow that. We were, okay, if he's on the backside, we can cheat the coverage the other way. Then all of a sudden they're leaving him on the backside, covering, maybe a flexed out tight end that they knew they weren't going to throw the ball to. So now we were having to scheme up a little more to go ahead and move him to the front side and other sides. It made it a little bit more challenging for us. Sometimes you'd say, oh, it makes it easy, just lock him up on somebody. But it made it a little bit more challenging for us to find a way to get him on somebody or in a position where it fit around the structure of the team. But by nature, that position in general for us is really critical in being able to play a lot of one-on-one. So I don't know that we've changed a whole lot. I think we'll just be a little bit more multiple so that we aren't leaving a guy like we had on an island to fight it.
With all the innovations on the offensive side of the ball since obviously you even started coaching, how difficult is it year on year? How much do you have to be staying ahead of the curve, and how much are you watching other defenses around college football to say, even like Georgia last year, I like what they're doing, I'm going to take from them, other defenses, just to stay at the top of your game to make all these adjustments?
Greatest lesson I learned from Coach Meyer, along with a lot of others, but never sleep on the game. That's what his big thing is it's always evolving. And, everybody talks about the evolution of the offense. The evolution of defense, I think, has been the one kind of spot that has fallen behind over the last 15 years. And I think that we're doing a better job defensively as you look around and seeing some more, evolution and changing things up, especially in the college game. But I know for me, spending at least 3 days, 2.5, 3 days every summer with kind of the air raid offensive guys that do this clinic every summer. They get a house and spend time just talking about obviously the evolution of offense and throwing the football. And I think that's where the offensive guys in general do such a good job. So the last 5 years, I'll try to spend at least 2.5 days with those guys, just sitting, being around, listening, seeing the new and different things that they're trying to do and implement. And all while I'm listening, I'm thinking in my head is all how to defend them.
They let you in those? I can't believe they would let you listen to those. That seems.
I was very fortunate. So it happened about 4 years ago that I think I was the first guy because, you know, I became friends with someone and they actually said, why don't you come down? Maybe it's because you're a head coach. I don't know. Maybe all of a sudden he's trying to be nice to me. And he let me come in and he actually thought it was pretty good because not that I've suspended, but then I could give a little bit of a defensive perspective on different things. And, it's been great for me. It's been invaluable. It's not just, you know, learning and adapting to things, but also keeping you know, up to tune with all the different things that are going on.
How pissed off do you get when you flip on the tape and you see an RPO with an offensive lineman like 5 yards down the field?
Well, if he's only 5, I don't get as upset. It's when he's 7, 8. It's when he's blocking a linebacker and driving him down as he's taking a drop, and they don't call it. You know, and you're like, but now you're going to focus on a defensive lineman holding. I mean, that's some point of interest this year in college football. We're gonna worry about defensive linemen holding the center or guard when he's trying to climb to the next level. Like, I actually would say I'd rather just say, hey, you can never be further than 4 yards or 5 yards down the field on a pass. Meaning, I don't care when the ball's let go. I don't care when, you know, or what. It's just if all of a sudden we look up and an offensive lineman is 5 yards down the field and the ball's caught, you know, they're trying to say, well, when the ball was released, he was only 3.2 yards, or he can't be over 4 yards. He was just under 4. Like, guys, he's blocking somebody that's in a drop. So
his back heel was at 3. His back heel, still behind.
It's really, they're allowed to be up to 3.9999 yards, and it's impossible, really, for the official to make the correct call. You know, so I don't actually worry about it all that much.
So I got to leave you with this because obviously, I am a Notre Dame alum. I was at that Notre Dame game last year. We have to talk about this a little bit. What was that post-game scene like, and what was kind of the feeling heading back from South Bend after that?
No, probably the greatest, you know, one of the best 3.5-hour drives that you could ever have. You know, I mean, just your guys and you know, in a bus, kind of relaxing and having a good time. You know, and that's where, yes, the moment afterwards, I think, you know, when you're with your buddies, when you're with that team in that locker room, is so unique. That's the beauty of what sports gives you. You know, to go out and see your – yes, those are all great things too, you know, to get the phone calls the next day. But just in that room to see all the work come together, you know, it's like a game like that on the road, because any win on the road is very unique. You know, that's where I said the growth of our program from in year 2 when we won at UCLA. I tell you, when you're on the road like that, the growth of your program is just incredible. And I'd say the same thing about the Notre Dame game. The growth of the program because of how you did it and going on the road and just obviously the magnitude of Notre Dame in general, it's really for the whole program, the guys inside it takes it to the next level. And, you know, we bottled that, we used that. And I think that's what propelled us to the whole season.
Definitely a different experience than mine after the game, which was crying into like 4 Long Islands at Brothers post-game. But so week 1, Ohio State, Notre Dame, your former defensive coordinator, Marcus Freeman. Any part of you rooting for Notre Dame in that one? Or maybe like saying, hey, it'd be cool if they won, something like that?
Not a chance. Nothing. There's not an ounce of blood in me that wouldn't always pull for your alma mater. In any case, in any chance, it is what it is. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's just I always try to tell people, at least, you know, you've always got one thing. If you played your alma mater, hopefully will always at least take you back and greet you no matter what. So my little guys had a little question because they don't know as much about your alma mater, right? We were watching the last game of the year, Ohio State, Michigan, because we played on a Friday. So we're at home watching it. And obviously Ohio State was ranked ahead of us. So my little guys at 7 years old said, Dad, are we rooting for Michigan? I'm like, what? No, we never can root against your alma mater. Like, but they're ranked ahead of us. And if they lose, they go, guys, things all take care of themselves. You know what? We don't want to root against somebody. We always root for somebody. And if it ain't us, then we're going to root for, you know, obviously the alma mater.
And Michigan jumped you guys anyway, somehow, right? So
it didn't matter. Like I said, just keep playing. All things take care of themselves. You never know how it's going to work out. You worry about those things, that takes up too much energy.
Well, I appreciate the time so much, Coach. Thank you so much for joining us.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Oof, man, Fickell. That was like an analytics manifesto that he put on there about, wanting to be aggressive, wanting to look your players in the eye. And like he was saying the things that we kind of say on the outside with, why fourth down decisions and being aggressive is a good thing in the long run. He really put it well into words there. So awesome stuff from him. And the thing that I've done a lot of these coaching interviews now, the thing that I feel like is the kind of common thread with the guys that really hit it, authenticity. Like you could tell when it's coming from an authentic place. And that's why the guys who are interviewing who are the top of college football, that's how they get there. They're not selling. Everyone talks about, you kind of have to be a used car salesman to be a football coach. I don't think so. I think you just have to live it. Like you can't, if you're selling something, people are going to catch on to they're being sold. They're being sold a bag of goods that doesn't actually exist. If you're living it, if that is your everyday, when he said, when I asked him, how do you not get complacent? Well, I wake up and I can put it on every day. That's how, that, you don't have to sell then. You just are that. So that to me is one of the biggest takeaways that I've had in some of these interviews.
More important than X's and O's, honestly.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Because if you get, last year, if you get, how many guys do you see have drafted?
9.
If you have 9 pros, not he is a good coach, and I'm not saying you don't have to be able to coach, but when you got 9 pros out there going against dudes that are going to be working at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, that's going to make your job a lot easier.
Yes, it is. That's how you develop guys, is buy-in, because these are impressionable 18. I know how I was at 18, 19 years old. If I had someone like that waking me up every day, giving me guidance, I would have been a lot better person than not having that. You just a lot of what player development is buy-in, is getting players to believe in themselves and develop themselves. Because you can put out a weight training plan all you want. If someone's going to go through the motions doing it versus someone actually wanting it, the results are going to be so fucking different. So different. I know from my own life. So different. All right, let's get into some segments. PVOOs. Positive vibes only online. So I come here bringing some maybe negative vibes. But it's from a good place. It's wanting better. This first one comes from NFL_ Doug Farrar of, where's Doug at now? I know he was formerly with Bleacher Report. Now he's at USA Today, NFL editor at USA Today. Does great work. I know his book is fantastic, The Genius of Desperation. Obviously, a lot of buy-in, on the analytics front, but this take, I just can't get on board with this take. And I didn't want to tweet it to him because I didn't want to put negative energy out there. But he tweeted out, listening to Joe Thomas on the call of the Browns game. Joe Thomas said, Gardner Minshew doesn't have a big arm. And Doug Farrar says, if you're not watching the tape, say so. Which, Dougie doesn't have a big arm. You got Gardner, that's the fucking knock on Gardner Minshew. I went back and pulled some scouting reports. Here's this from Lance Zierlein. Scouts are concerned by perceived lack of arm strength. Intermediate and deep throws require additional air. There's this from Dane Brugler. Can make all the throws, but doesn't have a power arm. Those guys I respect the hell out of. They are the best in the game in the media space at evaluating prospects. They say that. I went back and looked. I did some research on this. We have obviously charted every single throw of Gardner Minshew's collegiate, NFL career. The farthest throw from hand to landing spot, 55 yards. Right down the street. Came in Cincinnati week 7, 2019. Q4, 6:15. Look it up if you want. 55 yards. He put all you had into it. He did not have much more than 55 yards.
Still took an L, though. I think that was Joe Burrow's first win.
Who was that?
I think.
55 yards, though, is not... We talked... Go back and watch the old NFL longest throw contest that were on YouTube that used to air during the Pro Bowl, which they should fucking bring back. Those were sick. Seeing Brett Favre show up hungover as hell, sweating after doing nothing but throw the ball 3 times because he's just had himself a night out in Hawaii and still heave it 70 yards through the air to win those. electric stuff. I'd love to see, what Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes would look like in that. They need to bring that back. But every dude in that competition, I think Jim Harbaugh, not Jim McMahon, was like the lowest, and he was like 58. And that's probably what Gardner Minshew could get to if he really tried to rear back. But like that was what he got in an actual game, given it as all with pads on and whatnot. So no pads. But that is, again, and the thing about, the conversation around arm strength is oftentimes for draft prospects, people say average arm. A lot of people are scared to say below average arm because compared to college quarterbacks, it's average. Like Joe Burrow has an average arm compared to college quarterbacks. But once he gets to the NFL, in terms of starters, in terms of a guy like actually playing quarterback at a high level in the NFL, he is below average. Joe Burrow is a below average arm. Gardner Minshew is below average. Below average arm. Just is. He also had a Hail Mary last preseason, 2021, that was from 45 yards out that he didn't even make the end zone. Now, it did not come out of his hand correctly, but the thing is, when you have to give it a lot to throw it 45 yards, you risk having it come out of your hand incorrectly. When it's a flick, when it's an easy throw to get to 45 yards, usually you don't throw ducks like that. So, positive vibes only online. All right, next tweet here. We have Matthew Paris, and this is not so much about Matthew Paris. This is more who's a writer for the Washington Commanders beat reporter. This is about the content of the tweet. This is about Montez Sweat, actually, what he said. And he said, you don't hear this often. Montez Sweat was chasing a scrambling Carson Wentz from behind and was yelling, get rid of it, get rid of it. Wentz ran out of bounds instead. Something's never changed, man. Expecting a guy, whether it's Mitch Trubisky, whether it's Carson Wentz, Tiger to change his stripes after that Tiger has played 5+ years in the NFL. The Tiger's that Tiger. I still don't know whether the Commanders made that trade. All right, and the last one here. And this one's more just like, this tweet's fucking incredible. Tony Grossi, who's the Browns, analyst, is his role in his profile here. But he's been with the Browns for fucking covering them in some way, shape, or form for forever. I remember when I was back at first Browns training camp I went to, the one where Johnny Manziel was throwing left-handed throughout training camp, which was an absurd sight to see. I can like picture the scene so vividly. I think it was back 2016, maybe 2015, one of those 2 years. Throwing left-handed, and Grossi's doing radio. And that's when I was like, radio dudes are built different because you could hear him from like 30 feet away. And he's talking into a microphone 5 inches from his face. It was incredible. But here's a tweet from Tony Grossi. He said, I'm approaching 5,000 blocked accounts on Twitter. Who will be 5,000? Stay tuned. He's not joking. I've never gotten the conversation. I've never gotten one blocking anyone. The only person I've ever blocked works at PFF. His name's John Costco. And I block him because he tweets at me. He used to tweet at me like incessantly bad takes if I didn't. And so I blocked him as a joke to get him to stop. And I just like kind of liked how it felt having him blocked. So I've had one blocked count. 5,000 though. And then to go bragging about it. It's just an odd thing. It's not. I don't understand. I mute accounts, mainly accounts that tweet out bad takes, but like blocking entirely, I've never understood. Never understood the prerogative. All right, let's get in a little would you rather. Again, every time player, would you rather, unit, would you rather, and a random, would you rather. Quinn, you want to break it off? Asking me one?
Yeah, let's do it. So I'm going to start with player. And I just realized I actually didn't write this in the doc, but I'm kind of glad I didn't because I want to see I was going to say, I want to see your pure reaction because this is not who's just straight up better overall. This is not who would you rather start a team with. This is just, I want your opinion as a Packers fan, as a Packers shareholder, owner. You just mentioned him, Brett Favre or Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, fuck.
Because I really and truly, like, I don't know, like, where do Packers fans generally stand on that? Because I really have not seen, I mean, it's.
Ride with your guy now is how you stand. Like, Rodgers is doing it now, so you're Rodgers. Can't go against him. But, man, like, I had a soft spot for Brett Favre. He retired. I found out my senior year, first period, yearbook. I still remember clear as day. My friend, wise guy, Richard Weisbach, said, "You see Brett Favre retired, Mike?" And I'm like, I like bolted. I'm at my computer doing yearbook shit, whatever it was. I was an editor. I turned around. I'm like, "You're joking." It wasn't going to retire. He wasn't going to go out like that. I was at the fucking NFC Championship game. Saw his last throw, the pick to the Giants. I was like, "No, you're lying." He said, "Yeah, he just retired." I legitimately cried in yearbook. I had to walk out. In case you're wondering how I got into football and why I'm a psychopath about this, but started crying, walked out, couldn't believe it. Because I learned football from watching him play.
I think that's a lot of it, right?
So,
obviously, there's an age, right? If you didn't watch Brett Favre play, I mean, there's your answer. But I'm with you. NFL Quarterback Club '98 is probably my favorite football video game ever, and he was on the cover.
Even still,
on the cartridge.
I think I lean Rodgers, because as much as Rodgers just kind of laid an egg last year's playoffs against the 49ers. Favre laid a few eggs, man. And Favre was always liable to not just lay an egg, to throw it away, to give away a game for you. The fucking Rams game, what was that, 0-2, where he threw 6 picks in the first half? It was just so demoralizing. He had that in him. He always had the magic in him to bring you back from anything, but he had that in him that I'd just rather have Rodgers. It is wild that they went from the biggest gunslinger of all time to the most conservative high-end quarterback in terms of just not throwing interceptions of all time. So I'll lean Rodgers, but a good problem to debate as a Packers fan.
That's what I'm saying. I have never really heard that argued much from Packers. And maybe that's because I'm not on Packers Twitter, but I just have not, you just don't hear it a lot.
Yeah, and I think it's more just because you'll hear it once Rodgers retires.
Yeah.
It's just, you don't want, Packers fans don't want to get into the weeds right now because of how the breakup went. Because Rodgers has been so successful, you don't want to have that, because a lot of people. I always say this: people love Favre more than they love Rodgers. The vitriol when it was Rodgers versus Favre was real because Favre brought the Packers back. They sucked before, they were bad for so many years. Obviously, I wasn't alive, but my dad tells me they were nothing before him, and Favre made him something. Favre put him on the map. So yeah. I think a lot of Packers fans will probably still lean Favre in that debate, but I'll go Rodgers. Here's a debate that's not as fun if you're a fan of either team. Jalen Hurts or Tua Tagovailoa? Same draft class.
Yeah, this one was tough. You're
a lot of naysayers for both.
Right now, today?
Yes. This season, who do you want?
I almost just gut feeling. I'm almost leaning Tua.
Ooh.
Just because, I don't think he has to be that good for that offense to be right. You can be conservative-ish and just complete if you have a decent adjusted completion percentage with those receivers, which we argued last week, that offense can still be pretty good. And I'm not knocking Jalen Hurts at all. I think I don't know. I think the floor for the Dolphins offense is fairly high, dare I say, this year, just because they got dudes.
I'll also say this. I think I lean Tua as well. I know I lean Tua. But if you flipped situation, I would rather have Hurts in the Eagles situation than Tua. And I would rather have Tua in the Dolphins situation than Hurts.
Yeah, I agree.
Because with that offensive line, you could just run option stuff. You can run Hurts. You can use his legs. You can use that threat and still have this kind of high floor where you don't have to necessarily take advantage with his arm, with A.J. Brown, with Devontae Smith. Whereas, and that wouldn't fly as well in Miami. You kind of need a guy who's going to get that ball out quickly, get it out accurately to two receivers that just create separation immediately. So I'll couch it with that. But if I had to, in a vacuum, pick between, I'll probably lean to him. All right, what's your unit question?
All right, unit question. This one's topical, and we talked about him earlier. Alex Leatherwood, we'll call it the Alex Leatherwood Bowl. He goes from the Raiders to the Bears. Both O-lines not necessarily the best in the world. Bears or Raiders O-line?
Love that. Really love that question. I think I said the Bears were the most hapless offensive line in the NFL in that their ceiling is so meh. Their ceiling is 25th best offensive line. Where the Raiders at least have guys where it's like, if John Simpson becomes something, if Dylan Parham, looks good year one, could be. But like some of that was also if Alex Leatherwood turns it on. The best starter between the two teams is Colton Miller. So if you have a left tackle locked in that is good, I'll lean to that. I will lean Raiders on that, but it is
that was my thoughts too. Because you look at they have. I mean, I'm looking at their depth chart right now. They got Braxton Jones and Riley Reef, which I'm a Riley Reef
your best
guy,
player is
you don't know what you're going to get out of him at this point.
Yeah.
Like he missed a bunch of time last year, and I mean he was okay with the Bengals, and like that was kind of what he was billed at when the Bengals brought him in, which is like he's older, like he's been solid, but like we don't know exactly what we're going to get.
Your best player,
it's a big question mark,
is a slightly above average left guard in Cody Whitehair, which we would say is probably the least valuable position along the offense line. So take that for what it's worth. All right, my unit, and this was kind of across units, and this is more theoretical. Would you rather have the Commanders' defensive line or the Ravens' secondary? Probably what I would call best or second best defensive line, best or second best secondary in the NFL. Which way would you lean?
Yeah, so I feel like this one kind of harkens back to the question we had last week. Bengals wide receivers or Dolphins wide receivers, like do you value the depth or do you value like just the top heavy like stars? Because I think let me ask this: are we assuming everybody's full health?
Yeah, let's just do a
Chase
starting
Young's healthy. Marcus Peters is
starting
healthy.
4 for the Commanders D line, and then starting 5 for the Ravens secondary.
Yeah, so I mean, if you're assuming Chase Young's healthy, right? Like their starters are probably right, like.
Montez Sweat, John Payne, Jonathan Allen.
Yeah, those guys are probably better at their respective positions than what the Ravens are trotting out there at DB. But I mean, if you look at the Ravens like depth, I mean, is Kyle Hamilton going to start this year? I don't know.
No,
that's your
probably
guy.
not.
But I mean, he's like, and I know he's kind of been clowned on a little bit during the preseason. But like, I mean, if we believe in our evaluations, like he's probably going to be a pretty good player, and that's a guy that you can kind of deploy all around the secondary.
He'll probably be like their dime backer, honestly.
Geno Stone has been pretty good in a reserve role. Like, and Kyle Fuller, like I know he wasn't very good last year, but I mean he's been a pretty successful NFL corner, and like that honestly is like maybe one of the more sharp signings of the offseason, like kind of under the radar signings.
Yeah.
So I mean they're deeper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think like. I don't know. I mean, especially with like a secondary, you have to have that sort of depth. So I feel like I'm leaning Ravens a little bit here.
I'll say if we had the worry is like Humphrey and Peters. I'll say just assume they're back to the players they were before injury.
Yeah, that's what I'm assuming. Like everybody, like just in a vacuum, everybody's healthy, and we're debating guys.
I think I lean that secondary because I just think you can do a lot with that, as we saw with like the Commanders' defense being kind of like mid last year with that defensive line, still like doing work. Like they were good up front, and the secondary was in such shambles, and the linebacker groups in such shambles that it didn't really matter too much. So I think I lean the secondary, and especially lean the secondary if we're taking in the depth. The Ravens have so much depth that's just kind of their MO. They just know that they want their worst player in the secondary to be still good, and that's kind of how they run, and that's how we would run. And that's why I was curious, and we'll talk to Brandon Staley about on Monday's show. You're going to hear his thoughts on that sort of, let's say it wasn't D-line versus coverage debate, but like complete roster versus high-end players. We'll hear that. All right, what's the last one here?
All right, I'm curious to hear your rationale on this because I think, well, I'll just ask it. Would you rather never be able to go to an actual game again, like football, we'll just say college or pro game, or would you never be able to watch a football game at a bar/restaurant?
So basically, like every time you watch a football game, it has to be at home.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess you could go over to somebody's house, but yeah, that's kind of what I was. Homer house can't go to a public place to watch again.
That one's tough. I think I would lean never watch a game at a bar, and it's difficult because I obviously do that far more than actual games.
That was my thinking. Like you go to more games than I do.
Yeah.
I go to maybe say 3 or 4 Bengals games, a couple UC games, and then like a Louisville game. So that's like 7 or 8 games. But I mean, even just like a random game, like, this looks like a good Thursday night game. Like, do you want to go to like Knockbacks, or do you want to go to like Mount Lookout Tavern and watch?
Yeah.
Like I do that far more. And plus including road games, Bengals road games and stuff like that. Like I do that far more than I actually do going to the games.
But the in-stadium electricity
atmosphere,
is something that you just
Yep.
you can't replicate if you haven't been to, some of the best college NFL atmospheres. You just got to do it. Like you got to travel to the Penn States of the world. Even the Horseshoe's got a fucking good atmosphere. Like that is second to none. So to not be able to see that again, I would lament more than not be able to watch at a bar. Obviously, I do watch games at bars far more, but that one I would do. And now here's my last one. Would you rather go to a home win for the Bengals, I'll say for you, or a road win for the Bengals? And this was interesting, like the feeling being like you get gratification being around, other fans that lost. Or if you're at home, though, you're around a lot of people that won, and you're kind of celebrating with people that won. So which would you rather do? Yeah,
this one's kind of topical too, like coming off the Bengals run last year, because like I was at that Raiders game, right? Like that was, that had never happened in literally had never happened in my lifetime. So like that was awesome, but also, and I don't know if you could call this like a true road win, but like we were at the Circus, what's it called? Stadium Swim.
Yeah.
For the AFC Championship game, and like there were a lot of Chiefs fans there, and like that was cool seeing them being miserable and
seeing them like chirp.
Yeah,
and then
that was pretty.
Get it?
So I'm almost leaning road.
Yeah,
I guess it depends on the game, right? Like if I was to go to like a Bengals Jags game or something like that, and they beat the Jags, like that's like who the fuck cares? You know what I mean? So it almost depends on like the setting. Like if it's an upset win and the other team, like other fans are crying in their beer and stuff like that. Like I'm leaning road there, but yeah, I'll say road.
Okay,
I'll say road win.
So I went to 2010 playoffs, Falcons Packers. Obviously they're the one Super Bowl when the Falcons were the 1 seed, and this was right after the song "All I Do Is Win" came out, and the guys behind us literally the whole first half, because the Falcons were kind of up. I think they went up like 14-0 or 14-7 in that game. They kept saying, "All we do is win. All we do is win, baby." After like everything that happened good for the Falcons, and they kept playing the stadium. Some of the most annoying shit, and that stadium was loud as hell. They used to pump in crowd noise before obviously the new Benz Stadium, but. It felt great. It felt great to be able to like kind of like be like, apparently not all you do is win after the game. But a home win is just like I'd rather celebrate, a game in company than stomp on throats on the road. Because like the celebration afterwards is not quite the same on the road. It's more just like a relief afterwards. I don't know, it depends. But you can't. You can't find like-minded fans and celebrate.
Like if it's a game where like fans travel well and. You're at a bar, maybe not necessarily like a Bengals themed bar, but if you're at a bar where there's like a lot of Bengals fans or, in your case, Packers fans, like you can celebrate there too. Plus it's cool, like seeing other teams' stadiums and being like, oh, this is a lot nicer than Paul Brown or Paycor now.
It's a debate. Like Paycor. It's a debate. It's a good debate. All right. Last one here. Football adjacent power rankings. We're going with the best feelings in sports. And I did this one because over the summer I had my first hole in one. I played a lot of golf, like I said. Had never had a hole in one in my life. I was alone.
Oh, okay.
I immediately FaceTimed my brother afterwards and walked from the tee to the green while FaceTiming him. So he can confirm for that. There were guys on the next hole who saw it. They can confirm as well. But it was not the same not playing with anyone that I know. So that was sad. But my top 5 are here. Number 5, game-winning hole out in cornhole. That sounds lame as shit if you haven't had it, but I'm telling you.
It's oddly specific, but I know what you're talking about.
When the other team has 21 on the board, or over if you're playing over, and will win unless you put in the hole, and then when you put in the hole, you win, that feeling is fucking electric. You're like, that feeling's great. I literally did that in the game I played Luke Kuechly.
It's also Rosedale. Cool too because if you're out Best somewhere like Rosedale, right? Like whoever's waiting to play next is there, right? Like they're like, oh shit, we're getting ready to go. So yeah, you got a crowd, and like it's always nice when you do stuff like that in front of a crowd.
Yeah, so that's number 5. Number 4, decleating someone in football. Now I haven't played football outside of when I was on The Bachelorette, and I did decleat someone in that, my own teammate, since 7th grade. But man, and actually I did that at Notre Dame too for a year, and I did decleat someone in that too. But really laying a fucking hit on someone was the best feeling I remember in football. Scoring a touchdown, making a sick play, not nearly as good as just rocking, laying a fucking boom down on someone. That was the best feeling in football. So that's number 4. Number 3, hole in one. I've had one. It was sick.
Allegedly.
But it wasn't like as cool as I thought it would be. I hyped it up a lot in my head because I played golf growing up. I played off and on over my life, really started playing more this past year. Hyped it up a lot. It was kind of just like, cool. Now what's next? Not nearly as gratifying as I thought it would be. Number 2, dunking a basketball. Way cooler, in my opinion, than a hole in one. Like dunking a basketball just is a feeling of like dominance that you can't replicate. And the best feeling in sports is a walk-off home run. I had one in my life, 8th grade against crosstown rivals in Champaign. And that was probably the best moment of my life. It's really been all downhill since then. But a walk-off home run, game's over. You did the coolest thing you do in the sport. And I was down when I hit that home run. It was 2 outs. That was like, can't tell me shit after that. That's the best feeling in sports.
Fun fact, I hit a walk-off dong in softball like 2 weeks ago.
Best feeling in sports?
It was sick, yeah.
It's the best feeling in
Even
sports.
at 32 years old in like beer league softball,
You still get it?
pretty fucking awesome. Bounced off the top of the wall. It was sick.
Yeah.
Can I throw a couple in here?
What are yours? Yeah.
So I don't have like actual power rankings. These are just some to debate. And while we're sticking with baseball, like a diving catch, like a sick play in the field. Like I think that almost, maybe not a walk-off home run, but like that might be cooler than an actual home run. Like if you rob somebody in the outfield.
I've never robbed a home run. I do wonder if robbing a home run would feel great.
I've never gone over the fence, but I mean, like if you like dive in the gap and take away like a double or a triple, like that's pretty cool. You know, like a diving stab in the infield, like that's
my only concussion was diving.
I got
from
one
playing
too,
fall ball
sophomore year.
Just snapped my head into the ground.
Yep, I ran into somebody's knee. Not fun. Not fun. And then the other one I was going to throw in there too. I guess kind of like decleating someone since we're sticking with football, but mossing somebody, right? Like jump ball, contested catch situation. You go up, that's pretty cool too.
That might have been 6 on my list. Mossing someone, it is probably the second coolest thing you can do in football. Like that, it's kind of the same.
It's very
in the
primal.
same vein.
It's one-on-one, me versus you.
I dominated you.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. There you have it. Those are your football adjacent power rankings. If you had any that I missed, feel free to send them my way. Would love to hear what you guys have as the best feeling in sports. And it can't be anything that has to do with the new trend of having sex in baseball stadiums. That has nothing to do with sports. That's a completely different thing altogether. All right. Make sure you're watching the Movie Club, American Underdog. Next Thursday, we'll go through that. Make sure you're sending me mailbags. Next Monday, we'll go through that. And we didn't have any good enough takes to make this week's show. Go to the Speak Pipe link in the bio. Drop your takes in there for this upcoming season for takes on college football, whatever. Bring your takes to the show. I will grade them. Get in here. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy week 1 of college football. We'll be back Monday with Brandon Staley talking preseason breakouts, talking some NFL preview. Until then, take it easy.